right. Hi. Hello. Welcome, everyone. So excited about today because typically we have an industry expert talking about the burning issues that we're hearing about and seeing in education and learning. But today we are lucky enough to have our own technology expert from Bongo with us. So I'm so happy to have Corey Bajak, who heads up our development team at Bongo. And you all might know our CEO, Josh Kamrath, by now. So thank you both for joining today. So the reason why I wanted us to get together today is recently, Josh, you had a series of posts on LinkedIn about kind of the influx of AI tools that have been hitting the market and questions that both employees and also organizations should be considering before they adopt any new technology. We had a lot of interest in those posts, so we figure what's better than to get together and have a conversation about it. So just to level set, I think we all know that AI is not new. We've been using AI whether we knew it or didn't know it. My parents didn't know that they've known about AI for many, many years now. So whether it be Siri or Alexa or Netflix recommending something based on, something that we've watched, we've all kind of had it around us. But I think the big shift is just how accessible it's been. And, now the consumer really has a lot of control over the AI before it, I guess, being a bit more passive in the past. So with that accessibility come many concerns, which we want to talk about today. And so really it's the understanding of how both individuals and organizations can really safeguard their information. So that's what I really wanted to dig into today. So Corey, let's start with you. So I think, we tend to take for granted what people know about AI. And sometimes people think AI is just one thing, but really it's a bunch of different things that work together. So I think we'll start with a bit of a lesson for people. We hear lots of terms being thrown around like machine learning or generative AI or Gen AI or language models. So maybe let's just start with what do all these terms mean and how do they work together?
Sure. And I think this is crucial because as you talk to vendors and talk to your customers about AI, having this understanding is going to be very important. AI in general, at a very broad level, is just a system designed to interact in a human-like manner, right? Artificial intelligence. When we get into things like machine learning, this is where some of the phrases like training come into play. So for instance, machine learning is really that act of taking raw data of some sort, whether it's what you just watched on Netflix or how long it took this person to drive from point A to point B. Those are all raw data points, and machine learning is taking that data and translating it into something usable and predictable that allows AI to react to that information without being explicitly programmed to do so, right? People who come from a software background, the easiest programming paradigm that you could think of is kind of if then, right? So there's a lot of code out there that says, if the light is red, stop. If the light is green, go, right? Whereas you don't have to develop that explicitly when you're working with AI, and machine learning is what enables you to have something that's going to continually learn and evolve in a manner that doesn't require that explicit level of programming. Now, something that's been coming up even more lately is the most prominent form of AI we're hearing is generative AI, right? And generative AI is very explicitly the type of AI that generates content. We're all very familiar with ChatGPT. That's text-based generation, but it could be images, it could be videos, it could be audio tracks. It's really just about generating things. Large language models are kind of the crux of what we get for those text-driven AI, generative AI solutions. So things like GPT and OpenAI, they're working a great deal with text. And so it's just a model that's focused on text, and it's driven off very large amounts of data. So it can be as flexible and fluid as possible when it comes to responding to your requests.
Okay, that was super helpful. And we'll definitely circle back to a couple of things you mentioned. So the large language models and also the training of the AI in just a second. But Josh, I thought it would be a good opportunity for you to maybe take a step back and talk about the AI journey at Bongo. I started with the company about 6.5 years ago, and we were already utilizing machine learning. So, when Gen AI came about what was it now, 2 years ago, and it came on fast and strong, what were you thinking about kind of the evolution of Bongo and where you were going to take the company?
Yeah, I would say, like all tools, I feel like AI or, machine learning or things, these things are all just tools effectively. And, from my perspective, we've wanted to use and leverage cutting edge technology or different types of AI as tools in our platform to basically get jobs done easier and faster and with better outcomes. So, really, over the last several years, as we've been adding more AI-driven capability into the product, it's been with that, as paramount or as top of mind of, not just adding functionality for the sake of functionality or to have another shiny thing, but really trying to boil it down to something that, again, saves people time or leads to better outcomes. So I would say that's kind of a philosophy, and then more pointedly answering your question, our vision or kind of my vision is, we've always wanted Bongo to be the measuring stick for skills, right? So if it gets measured, then there's lots of things you can do with that in terms of, planning or additional learning or things of that sort. So being able to add AI functionality to better that vision of being the measuring stick for skills has been essentially the goal.
Great. And Corey, I know you were obviously a big part of this since you led the team that built it. So I would love to get your input too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh hits the nail on the head where the prevalence of generative AI and the availability of these AI-driven tools was crucial to Bongo, just because in this, I think everybody knows on the surface that speaking about and demonstrating your skills is better than answering a multiple choice question correctly. It's a better measuring stick, as Josh used, in terms of understanding somebody's competency level. And the challenge has always been scale, right? How can people grow and evolve at scale without somebody having to watch every minute of video? And AI presents a great opportunity where we can utilize it to help provide coaching tips and feedback to learners and score learners if necessary, and also provide tools to reviewers so they don't have to watch every minute of every video. We can guide them towards the really important parts that are those key demonstrations of someone's skill. On the technical side, that outlook that Josh has around focusing on a use case and why you've incorporate AI into your platform is actually crucial, not just from the standpoint of how effective it can be, but it's also crucial from the standpoint of some of the techniques around ensuring a secure and private and appropriate use of AI is utilized by the technology. It's really hard to control someone's personal data or private data if your interaction with AI is just, hey, go do this thing, right? By having a really targeted use case, you can utilize some techniques for interacting with a large language model, for instance, that can really help control access to learner data and private data.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you both sort of talked about really understanding what the value to the business is and starting there. And I think the interesting thing about particularly what we're doing, but I think it's the same for many organizations, is you have to think about someone kind of using the AI to build something, but then who are the end users that are going to be interacting with that? And so I think we have to think about security from both ends. And so whether it be, again, that individual using it to better their performance or an organization using it to improve their bottom line, I think we need to think about how to do that safely. And it's fun to play around with these things. I think we've all had fun, especially when it first came out. But Corey, going back to what you were saying earlier, we hear things like, this trains the model or it doesn't train the model. So in layman's terms, what does that mean? What does it mean in terms of security? What does it mean in terms of, what other people are going to have access to?
Right. And I'm sure people have seen things about this on the news. These models, they get better over time with the more interactions they have, right? Every time data goes into the model, every time new data becomes available to the model, that machine learning algorithm can then go through that act of training the model on that new data to better refine the outputs. A really simple thing that we use all the time is something like Google Maps, right? Is that the more people drive between point A and point B in a given day, the better it can predict the different traffic patterns that people are utilizing and just improve over time. And the same thing applies in the space we're working in, right? Where as we put information into the model, as we interact with the AI model, it wants you to give it that data to train it so that for every interaction it has for all of its end users, that's going to improve. The tricky part is, do you want that data in their model?
Right. Most likely no. I would assume, especially if you're using it for a business purpose. I think it's fine when I'm asking what to cook my family for dinner tonight, but probably not when I'm giving
exactly. There's been some, when ChatGPT first came around and a lot of organizations didn't really have well-defined policies for how to interact with it, there were a few snafus where, you saw publicly, like, engineers for companies doing something where they inadvertently uploaded all the source code for their company into the model, right? That's massively concerning. And the thing about models in general is that data is largely unstructured. And when I say that, if you think about structured data, that's like saying, I have a user record for Corey in my database, and Corey is leaving the company or something. I'm going to delete that record, right? Very simple. All the things that are Corey, when it's a trained model, is being dispersed in very unique and interesting ways and very hard to extract from that data store as compared to something that's more structured.
Okay, so that kind of takes us down the path of when organizations are considering utilizing AI, what's the better choice? Is there a better choice over using kind of a public large language model versus building your own?
Yeah, it really depends on the use case and how the organization you're working with is interacting with that model. For instance, something like a company that's training their own model, it's usually going to be a very targeted use case for why they're doing that, and that might be very relevant to you. The questions you want to ask, though, at that point are, if I leave or if I decide I don't want my data to be part of your system anymore, what are you going to do to extract it, right? And the key understanding is, what data of yours are they taking and incorporating into the model? Is it personally identifiable, or is it information that's just general and you feel comfortable with it going out there, right? So for me, when my Netflix watching goes in and it's a recommendation for what I want to watch, and it drives, some overall algorithm for what other people see in their top end list, sure, I'm okay with that. But if I'm talking about, if I'm going through a counseling session, right, I might not want my counseling session to be going into a model of some sort where it can't be easily extracted, even if I'm not saying my name or it's not personalized information. It's still me and my problems that I'm talking about. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's a great point and some great questions that you're having people ask too. And, in a company like Bongo, where we are having our AI interact with tons of other different businesses, versus really just using it internally for our own uses.
Right.
I think that was probably a big deciding factor for you all when it came to, how people are going to interact, what the road that we chose to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we first introduced AI in the product, it was somewhat of a generalized fashion. And we met with a series of customers kind of asking about our direction and how it would work for them. A lot of positive feedback. And to a T, everybody said, can I get my coaching personalized, right? I want the coaching and the feedback I get on my videos to be focused on my use case, to be focused on my materials. And as we investigated how to do that, The key thing we wanted to avoid was actually using any private information or customer information to train a model and to have it kind of dispersed into that unstructured data source. So what we did instead is something in the industry that's called a zero-shot approach, which is a technique of interacting with a large language model where you basically you prompt it and you ask it questions with the answer embedded. And by doing so, you can say, I don't want to train the model. I don't need the model to be trained to get a good answer on this. So really what we're doing is we're utilizing a large language model to be able to effectively translate what people are saying, taking something that's fluid and subjective and interpreting it. But what we're not doing is sending personal information or company private information into the model. So that's basically supported through our learning objective approach. Somebody can upload materials, generate learning objectives, and those detailed learning objectives are then sent along with what a learner might say in a video to effectively provide them with very directed feedback, very directed coaching, and if people want, to effectively score them for how well they're achieving those learning objectives.
And like you said, none of the original material is being kept and being used to train.
Exactly. So we avoid that whole problem entirely because from a Bongo perspective, we know and we value our customers' private information. We consider every word that comes out of a learner's mouth to be personally identifiable information, right? So if somebody comes along and says, I want you to purge all our videos from a certain period of time, we can do that safely because we haven't sent that data off to a large language model where we don't really know what's happening with it.
So circling back to, a good question to ask is, I guess, if you're going to be adopting another technology that utilizes AI or even, creating your own, is really what is happening to this data, right? Is this data being used to train it? If it is being used to train, is that being confined in a certain way?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, right? Whether it's an internal model owned by a company or a public model, like many of the popular large language models that people interact with today, the key questions are, what data is going in to your AI, and how do I get it out if I want to?
Right.
And that's something where, I feel like the zero-shot approach we took allows us to answer that question well. And I'm sure a lot of other companies have their own answers to how they support that. But it's a key question that you need to understand because, nobody wants to have to go through and read the fine print to figure out that, oh, by the way, all your stuff that you thought was private actually isn't.
Right. And you said something earlier on, so I just want to clarify. You were talking about, things that you can say to prompt the responses. But, I think, I do that myself in ChatGPT, but at Bongo, that you guys have done that work, right? The learner doesn't have to, or the user doesn't have to know how to prompt, because I know there's tons of classes on that right now. And
yeah, absolutely. So what we've done is not only for the security and privacy aspects that I mentioned, but for the reliability and quality of the results you get from interacting with AI, you have to be very deliberate and consistent. What we don't want to do is have situations where one learner is being evaluated differently by AI and getting different feedback from another, right? We want to keep the bar consistent. And so there's techniques like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where instead of just saying, how was this video? Was it good or not? Right? A very structured question to say, assign to AI a role. You're a speech coach or you're a leadership coach, right? And this learner is trying to express a certain skill. How well have they done so? How well organized were they in terms of presenting this material? So asking very detailed, structured questions, giving a role to the AI, asking for examples is really crucial, right? It's kind of the show your work approach that'll happen. It's just like with people, and everybody's been in elementary school and they're doing a math question and they know the answer, right? But teacher says you got to show your work. We have to do that with AI sometimes, because if you don't ask it to show its work, you might not get the responses you want.
And that can definitely lead us down a whole other rabbit hole. And so I'll just preface, my next question by saying we plan to have a lot more of these sessions. I think reliability is one you mentioned. I think, how the AI knows that the answer is right is another thing. And if it doesn't know the answer, what does it do? So those are all definitely conversations that we want to have. So I will just say, if anyone has any ideas of or questions that they have that they want to learn more about AI, please put it in the comments, and we'll kind of plan out our future sessions on that. So, I think we could probably start wrapping this up now. And as I mentioned, we really only scratched the surface. But Corey, you've mentioned a few really good questions that people can ask. And so I would say if there's one really, it's kind of tippy top, the most important thing that you should be asking either yourself, if you're just an individual playing around with AI, or if you're in a leadership position and you want to introduce AI at an organizational level, what would that question be?
Yeah, it's really that general question of what are you using my data for? Mm-hmm. And I think I see a question in the chat there, to share with the group. Do you think we need contract language that outlines expectations around data ownership and the ethical use of data? I think yes. And I think even if there isn't AI in the solution, I think that's appropriate. I just think that the importance around that and the types of answers you're looking for might change a little bit as AI becomes more prominently available through different software solutions.
Great. And then Josh, how would you suggest other CEOs, heads of businesses, approach implementing AI, if they haven't done it before?
Yeah, I would say, well, one, I agree with Corey that, just from like a InfoSec or, we've gotten, especially this year, kind of countless AI addendums to contracts that specifically are organizations trying to spell out how their data is used or their content's used and how our tool interacts with those users. So, in my book, that's effectively like a prerequisite to work with organizations today. It's similar to like, is your, tool responsive? You can't really imagine not working on a mobile device these days as a software product. But, in terms of like what questions should be asked, I would really go back to, why does the tool, like, what is the purpose of the tool? What's the true outcome that it's trying to achieve?
Right.
Again, just adding AI to add AI, in some cases, like, makes more work, right? Like, what most tools or platforms have done is make it really easy to author a lot of content. From our perspective, like, that's great if that content serves a purpose. And that's really where tools like Bongo can kind of functionalize content or purpose-built learnings. So the answer of what should CEOs be asking, in my book, it's what is like the ultimate goal or purpose of that tool that organization is wanting to adopt.
That's great. Well, thank you both so much for chatting today. And like I said, I think there's a lot more. I have a lot more questions that have come up from this conversation. So I think we'll be planning quite a few more of these. So look forward to chatting more about all the things very soon. So thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. See ya.
Bye.